Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, it's the best time of the year, March Madness. You excited?
Ooh, not as excited as last year.
I know, I'm not as excited as
last year and 2 years ago, they got all this momentum. Now it's like, ooh, what's going to happen?
Mike, I love your reaction to that.
Nobody knows. It's a big mystery.
That's a lot of Hog fans' reaction to seeing this bracket. And we have some questions about Arkansas's draw in the NCAA basketball tournament because Mousetown wants to know, did Arkansas pay the price for this late season slump or what? Illinois and Kansas, a 9 and a 1 seed. 2 years ago, it was a 13 and a 12 seed. Last year, a 14 and a 6 seed. Forget the Elite Eight. I say one and done.
Yeah, that maybe is a little bit of an overreaction. I'm not saying that beating Illinois would be easy, but yeah, they're a tougher first game opponent than the previous 2 years. They're very similar teams. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they've both been up and down. They both seem to be playing their best basketball in December. They're a little bit different looking teams. Illinois is bigger, more physical. They kind of go with a 3-forward lineup, and they've got 2 6'9" and a 6'10", and then 2 guards. Arkansas sometimes has 4 guards out there and 1 forward, so they can go big or small. One's probably a little quicker. One has better statistics in terms of stealing the ball, dunking it. The other better rebounding team, but the stats aren't radically different.
No.
And neither one of them are a good outside shooting team. Actually, fans would be shocked by this, but Arkansas is a better shooting team from the floor. Regular field goal percentage and better three-point shooting, slightly better. Either one of them are very good. So it looks like to me it's going to be an inside game, and Arkansas is going to have to have discipline. They're going to have to work the ball around, not panic when that inside is going to be, it's going to be tough to score inside, but you got to try to get those backdoor layups, have somebody cut inside, flip over the top of somebody. The passes are going to have to be good. And then they're going to have to play really good defense on the defensive end, which they haven't consistently done. But I do think that game is winnable. The difficult part is doing that and then coming back 2 days later and playing Kansas in essentially what will almost be a home game for Kansas because they're so close to their
If Kansas wins.
If Kansas wins, but come on. They're not going to win?
Yeah, I know.
There's been one 16 seed in the in history of the tournament. He's won.
Hey, I'm just joking.
So
here,
there would
I'm
have to be
joking.
history made there. So, I mean, it's tough. Is Kansas not beatable? No. Arkansas and Kansas do actually have a common opponent, Baylor.
Yes.
And Arkansas went to Waco and lost by 3. Kansas went to Waco and lost by 6.
Exactly.
So that's one common opponent. Kansas was a little bit up and down. They got curb stomped by TCU. That's the biggest mystery on their schedule. They just got beat badly. So maybe when they play Arkansas, they overlook the Razorbacks a little bit. Maybe they don't play real well, and then Arkansas wins the game. I don't know. But it's definitely, Mousetown is right. It's definitely different than the last 2 seasons, and getting past the first weekend, I wouldn't say they're one and done. But getting into the round of 16, the Sweet 16, going to be a lot harder.
My thing is everybody's freaking out about Kansas on social media, Mike. And my big point that I made on Twitter this morning was, guys, you have to get past Illinois first. And
yes, you do.
And I feel like a little bit fans, I know Muss isn't it, and I know the team isn't, but fans are overlooking that first opponent and looking at Illinois on paper, like you just said, they're very similar to the Razorbacks. So it's going to be a close matchup, I feel like, unless something crazy happens from now until then.
You don't think Brett Bielema would show up, right? He's got football, right?
Yeah, he's got football. He's not going to show up. I don't think he's going to show his face there at home, Mike, at all. Muss Enthusiast says, yeah, another loss after having a large lead at some point in the game. Do you think this is fixable, Mike? And then he also adds, why do you think this year's second half adjustments haven't worked compared to last year's, where we might have been the best second half team in the nation?
Well, let's start with the first one. Why is it fixable? Anything's fixable, but the problem is when you get this late in the season, issues that you've had all season long don't tend to get fixed. You know, that's the problem. If the previous 2 years you're going in on a roll, You fixed a lot of the issues you had in early January. This problem has been going on off and on the entire season, and there's not anything to make most people think, oh, suddenly this inconsistency is going to go away. So do I think it's fixable? Yes, anything's fixable. Do I think it's likely to be fixable? Probably not. Now, the other part of that was second half adjustments. It's amazing to me, and I've talked about this, I have a lot of people I accept as Facebook friends. I probably should have set up an actual work Facebook account.
I don't know why you did it.
But I didn't do that from the beginning. I'm just kind of a meatball when it comes to the social media. I just allowed anybody that wanted to be a Facebook friend to be one. I would check and see if they were Razorback fans, and if they did, it was like I didn't have to know them. Yeah, I'll accept them as fans. And the reason it's a great help, because in the old days, what did I have to do when I was trying to figure out how the fans felt about something? You got to walk around at Walmart, or you're in the bank, or you're somewhere, and see people come up and talk to you. Well, that's not a lot of people. And sometimes I'd go to baseball games, and you stand around on the concourse. People would come up and ask you about football issues or basketball issues. But with these Facebook friends accounts, I'm able to, and there's like 1,300 of them. And I'm able to go through and scroll and look at what they're saying and what their friends are saying.
And you reply to them too, right?
Sometimes, but mostly I just read what they say because I'm interested in knowing what they think. And it's amazing how many fans out there think Musselman just suddenly forgot how to do these adjustments, forgot how to do a second half adjustment. It's his fault that they're not doing in the second half what they did in games last year. And I want to answer this question because it's obvious to me that that's not the issue. He didn't suddenly turn into a different guy in one season from what he's always been, going all the way back when he was at Nevada. He was this way. He always had this reputation. To me, it's rather obvious that the differences between this year and the previous two are the players on the team.
Yeah, you have almost an entirely different team.
They don't adjust to coaching as well. And what you look at right off the bat is the number of young players. And you also look at the fact that you don't have any established transfers that provided the kind of upper class leadership that they had. Look at last year's team. Where's the J.D. Note here? He'd been in Arkansas system. Where's the Amude, who transferred in but was a mature upper level senior type player? Audis Toney, Jalen Williams, who'd been in the system for a year last year. These kind of guys provided leadership. John McDonald told me, and he's the greatest coach in the history of college sports. He won 43 national championships. And I was asking him one time, how do you do this? And he said, the first thing you have to understand is, and this is a very important point, really good athletes in any sport don't necessarily come in and take to coaching because they've been so good before that they a lot of times had it in their head, I don't need a lot of somebody telling me what to do. I'm pretty good already. And so the key there is when they're a freshman, he said, I don't get in their face a lot. I don't try to adjust a lot of things. I let my upperclassmen do that because they've been in the system. And he said, they'll get in here and start doing this and doing that. All I got to do is talk to my upperclassmen and say, hey, rein this guy in. He's not listening to me. And it's not me trying to do it to him. It's them. And there's something about peer pressure and your teammates that has a much bigger impact on you than a coach. And he said there was one particular instance where we had a really talented athlete, and he came in and he was a problem. He wouldn't listen to coaching. He was doing what he wanted to do. And he said, those guys, those leaders on that team came to me and said, get rid of him. We don't want him here. He's causing issues. And he said, I did. I trusted them. I wasn't in that locker room listening to what was going on, but I did. I got rid of him because I trusted them. And I'm not talking about getting rid of people here, and I don't think that necessarily the issue is guys coming in and thinking they're all that great. But I do think when you're an AAU player and you go all the way back to a junior high age and go through the AAU system where you always have been so good, and the coaching at the AAU level is not all that good. There's some better than others. But the guys have learned to win just based on what they do, and they don't have to make adjustments to win. Suddenly you get to this level and you do have to take coaching. If you didn't need coaching, schools could save a lot of money and just recruit players and give them NIL deals and don't pay coaches.
Yeah.
You need coaches and you need to listen to them. And I think rather than just ignoring the coaches, I think you get into games, you get tired, and you just psychologically revert back to what you did in other situations. I think that's why we see Anthony Black making these crazy passes that go all out of nowhere, because he could do that at the AAU level, and if it didn't work, so what? I'll just come down the next time and dunk it. And there are just other issues. The shots that Council takes sometimes, where the other day they were up by 13 against A&M, and early in the second half, he goes into the right side of the lane. He's trapped by 3 guys. Instead of trying to pass the ball up, he goes up, does a 360 turnaround, and tries to hit a fall-away jumper. It was an insane shot to try to make. And it wasn't what they want. They want that ball inside.
Yeah.
And he got it. They got the ball, went down, made a layup, got fouled, 13-point lead becomes 10, and then everybody started doing that. It wears off. I did it, the next guy does it, the next guy does it. Again, this is not people necessarily ignoring coaching, but they're reverting back to what's instinctive with them.
Yeah.
And so when you have these guys like Note, Amude, Tony, and Williams on a team, they keep things together.
Yeah.
And this team doesn't have that. So I think that's to a large degree why these so-called second half adjustments aren't happening this year. It's going the other way.
I would say you're correct on that, especially when, you know, you're trying to, Musselman is running plays, right? Musselman is riding up and running plays.
More than any other basketball coach I know, he coaches like football. He has game plans. He has plays.
So he has everything meticulously planned out to a T. He goes, and I watch him in the huddle. I've watched him write up 4 or 5 different plays. Watch him on the sidelines. Right. But he is coaching, he is calling out plays. If the players aren't executing them, right, it comes down to a guy like J.D. Note, Jalen Williams, to say, look, that play's not going to work in this moment. We need to have a plan B or a plan C. And that's where the leadership of the players takes over. And you're exactly right. My dad has talked about it before. When you have a true leader out there that can say, Coach, your play is not going to work here. I have to make a split-second, 10-second judgment and try and make something work. And that's where you have leadership of players.
Yeah, I mean, some players are allowed to do certain things because they've earned that right. The coach trusts them.
Yeah.
But I see this look on Musselman's face half the time where he looks like, what was that?
Why did you do that?
What was that? That's not in what we worked on.
Exactly. And that's not what I called. That's not what I asked you to do. So I agree with you, Mike.
It's not on the coach. It's on the players. I'm just telling you that. If you think that, you don't know much about sports.
Yeah.
Because he didn't suddenly forget how to coach in 1 year.
He didn't suddenly forget how to coach. But speaking of leadership, I believe we have a question on that because Razor Boo says true upperclassmen leadership is missing from this year's team. They say exactly what you say, Mike. Tons of young talent, but every season, preseason conference, SEC tourney, and soon NCAA tourney is a first for them. Do you believe they overcome the jitters and play their talent here at the end of the year? I would love to see all of the freshmen back for their sophomore year. Well, that might not happen, rather than most set on the end of a pro league bench.
Okay, well, we've already answered most of his questions. The key part to me was he's asking about what happens because these guys, you know, have had a learning experience this year, all of these McDonald's All-Americans, and even a transfer like Ricky Council IV, because it's been a learning experience, do they all come back? No, that's not happening. I promise you that Nick Smith Jr. is gone, Anthony Black is gone. I've talked to a lot of people about what happens after that. Nobody seems to know. It looks like the Mitchell brothers and Jalen Graham have extra eligibility if they choose to do it. The people I talk to don't know if Musselman wants them to come back. Maybe, maybe not. The portal has just opened. We're going to start hearing a lot more about guys that Muss is looking at in the portal. So whether or not certain people come back, you know, has to do maybe with what Muss thinks he can get out of the portal. We've seen him encourage people to leave if he thinks there's somebody better in a portal. So I don't know what Devo's going to do. He's a junior. He can come back his senior year. Does he test the NBA? Does he say, hey, I can make some money in Europe or whatever?
Yeah.
Does he say, gee, I'd like to transfer? I don't know what
I'd
he
like to
does.
transfer.
Probably, most people I talk to think he's coming back,
Yeah.
but they don't know for sure. And then you've got all these freshmen, Pinion and all these guys. There's 3 of them. What happens to them? Do they all come back? You know, in a normal system years ago, you just looked at these freshmen. There's 3 of them that are all 4 stars. One of them was Player of the Year in the state of Alabama. I mean, come on. Yeah. You know he's going to be a good college player. It may take him to his sophomore gets better. Now, he's redshirted. One of those guys didn't even play. Maybe he played a little bit.
Played a little bit.
But the point is, you have a chance to get better, and then by the year, I mean, Alabama's got, you know why Alabama's winning this year? Their 5-star can't miss one and dones are surrounded by a lot of 4-stars that have been at Alabama for a while.
Yeah.
So you would like to take a guy like Devo, have some more Devos that are into their junior year, maybe some of them into their senior year, to mix with guys that you're bringing in out of the portal and also 5-stars. I mean, Muss is bringing in at least 2 more 5-stars. They're already signed. I don't know what he does with the portal. And I'm not going to give him advice on how to build a team. I do think you have to, at some point, have to have guys that have been in your system a while, have experienced your coaching. They can explain your style of coaching to guys that come in. What if a transfer portal guy comes in and goes, man, I don't like Muss, he yells at us too much.
And they develop
into positive feedback.
They develop into leaders.
And then these guys say, hey, look, that's the way he is, but if you want to win, it'll work. So I'm going to take a guess and say that next year's team is going to look a lot different from this year's team. There's not going to be a lot of familiar faces next year. Some, but not a lot. But they will have some if Trevin Brazile comes back. That's not assured.
No.
It's not.
He's on NBA draft list.
So we don't know. But I think the team next year will be different again.
I think it's going to look a lot different.
I think you pay attention to the portal stuff that's going on right now.
Yeah. We already know that Muss has his sights set on certain people. So we'll keep up with that as it goes on, as the postseason goes on. Razor Runner asks, do you think that the second half collapse against A&M could have been from tired legs? The Hogs had a hard-fought game the day before, while the Aggies had last played 4 days earlier, and Muss has a short rotation. Now, the Hogs had 5 of 12, 42%, 3-pointers in the first half, and 0 of 8 in the second half. Smith was hitting in the first half, but missed his last 7 shots in the second half. He played 39 minutes, and is he maybe not fully back in shape from his layoff? That's a lot of questions there, Mike.
If you really look at the minutes played, and I'm not saying that's not a factor at all, but 3 guys have had most of the minutes. Anthony Black, Ricky Council, and Devo Davis. They're all 33, 34 minutes a game average. They've played a lot, so maybe those guys get a little worn out. I don't think Nick Smith Jr., the guy's played less than half the season. Since he's come back, he's averaged around 24 minutes. I don't think this guy got tired. I think he started missing shots, and it just sort of boomeranged.
Could be frustration as well.
A lot of things could happen there. He's not what he's going to be. He hasn't had enough time to develop. Even and his best basketball would be next year, the year after that, or whatever. I don't think fatigue. There's been a lot of talk that needs to play more guys. I read on social media, well, we only played 7 or 8 guys. We've got some guys over there. They need to start playing some of these freshmen. And if you did that, there would be less minutes for these other guys. I'm not saying that's not a factor. There are even people saying, I've looked at the fact that Illinois tends to play around 8 or 9 guys.
They do.
And they're saying, in order to win this game, we're going to have to match that, or we'll wear down again. That's this wearing down theory.
Okay.
When you get beyond those guys, Anthony Black, Ricky Council IV, and Devo Davis, the rest of them have not played huge minutes.
Yeah.
And yet they're part of the problem in the second half. So I don't think it's a wearing down, a fatigue thing. I think it's more about what I said before.
Yeah.
Not saying that's not a factor at all, but I don't think it's the main factor.
I don't think it's the main factor. I feel like these guys are well conditioned. They go through intense conditioning throughout the season. I don't see that being a factor, or having Musselman say that that could be a factor, because if that was even showing signs early on, he would have corrected it.
Yeah.
That's an easy correct. If your fatigue is your problem.
It could be somewhat of an issue in some games, but with 3 or 4 players, but it's not why the Mitchell brothers were having problems there for a while.
No.
It's not why Anthony or Jordan Walsh sometimes has issues.
Yeah.
I think what we've talked about before is more of the real problem.
Yeah, I think so as well, Mike. WV Hog fan says, I do not like this one and done for college basketball players. I would like for the NBA to adopt MLB's model, where a player can be drafted in high school and then not be eligible to be drafted again for 3 years. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, that would be really good.
Yeah.
Because you would take the McDonald's All-Americans and give them a lot of money, and then if you were just below that level, you would be guaranteed, you would know that you were going to have that guy at least through his junior year.
That'd be great.
Might come out after a junior, so that'd be great. Major League Baseball has a totally different situation than the NBA. They've got this massive, think about the Major League rosters compared to the NBA rosters.
Yeah.
The sheer number of players that they have to have on a roster as opposed to an NBA
This
team.
versus this.
And take a look at the difference in the draft. Major League draft goes round after round after round, and the NBA draft is very short and compact. So they're two totally different situations. I think that Major League Baseball figured out a long time ago there are certain guys that are can't miss, and we like to get them in our system
Early
and get them onto the field as a major leaguer as fast as possible. So yeah, we're going to take them right out of high school if they want to come. But the guys just below that, hey, why don't we let the college programs develop them, because it is a proven fact. You can go and look at it. There are guys that have definitely helped themselves. You look at where they would have been drafted out of high school, you look at where they end up drafted after 3 years, and they're making a lot more money. They're taking a risk, but they're making more money. So I think the Major League Baseball people know these college programs are good, and they're doing a good job of developing these guys for 3 years, and we're better off getting them, because they'll go quicker through our minor league system after 3 years than they would have straight out of high school. I don't think the NBA cares about that. And I've said before, there's every indication they're going to get rid of one and done. So if you don't want these one and dones, that's probably going to go away anyway.
Yeah.
Most of them are going to go straight to the G leagues, and then they'll alternate back and forth or whatever. But I don't think that it still looks like to me they're not going to adopt the major league model. In other words, if you don't go straight to the NBA out of high school, what if you go to a college and you have a good freshman year? They'll still probably take you.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna get away with this one and done thing. If you have a good player that was highly ranked, he just didn't decide to go straight into the NBA out of high school, you still may lose him after 1 year.
Yeah.
You're not going to see the major league model.
But you might see it change to be less one and dones with NIL, with the addition of NIL.
That's an X factor. I still think NIL is going to be adjusted.
It will be, but if it keeps going the way it is, where players can make a bunch of money with NIL deals, or is it a better business decision to stay in college for another year and make more money?
Possible.
Possibly. It possibly could be.
We've seen it happen more in football than in basketball.
We have seen it happen more in football, but I think if more and more money gets thrown at these players, they might stick around for longer. Hot Dogger says, Musk says they're all young, and that's been a problem for them winning games. But these same young men were touted 5 stars and All-Americans. If youth is the issue, how will they fare playing in the pros?
Well, for one thing, they'll have the same issues. They won't play as well as rookies as they would be their second year or their third year. So it's going to be the same issue.
Obvious.
The difference is they're not going to be one and done in the NBA unless they don't produce at all. That's how they'll be one and done. And if you've spent money on these guys, you're not going to give up on them after a year. But it's the same process. The difference is the NBA doesn't have to deal with it. There's not some level above the NBA where they draft this guy, pay him a lot of money, and he comes in and he's there 1 year and says, bye-bye, I'm gone. I'm going up to the Super NBA level.
Super NBA.
So they don't have to deal with that. So they will get to see. Now, my guess is Nick Smith Jr. will be like Jalen Williams, only you'll probably see him more in NBA games, but he's still going to play G League games.
Yeah.
And you're going to see the same thing with Anthony Black. He'll probably be more G League, but they'll both get on the floor, and then how they do in an NBA game will determine how much they actually play. But they're not going to do next year what they would do the year after or the year after if they have normal development, and we don't know that they will. I guess what he's asking is, are these guys overrated? And I've had fans say that. I've read fans saying that. Nick Smith Jr. is not a number 3 guy. What are you talking about? You haven't seen what he can do. He's been out. He's a freshman. For the reasons we've already mentioned, Arkansas hasn't surrounded its 5 stars with a lot of experienced guys that have been in Arkansas system for a while. There's a lot of reasons why Nick Smith Jr. and Anthony Black haven't looked like some of the guys that Alabama has. But I'm not going to sit here and say whether or not they're going to be ultimately really good NBA players or average or whatever. I don't know enough about the NBA to know that.
Well, the players around you do affect how you look. I mean, we've seen that with Alabama, but also, I mean, Nick Smith Jr., when you watch him and you really just watch him take over certain plays, I mean, he does have that NBA caliber talent.
Yeah, he looks the part at times.
At times, but that's part of who he's around.
Right.
He hasn't played much that year. If he played all season long, I think we'd have a different conversation about that. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. I don't know if that saying they're overrated is totally true, but I get what fans are saying there.
Fans are saying.
I get what fans are saying there. RKB 1961 says, like it or not, Mizzou is now a formidable late-season rival. Interesting take. Neither Tex or OU will view Arkansas as a rivalry game.
It's such a statement. I disagree with every part of that. First of all, Missouri has been a formidable late-season opponent.
Yeah.
And that's largely due to Arkansas's football program not being where it needs to be. I promise you, Sam Pittman has made some major corrections in this offseason. I think you're going to see a lot of changes next year. Arkansas will not remain a team that Missouri beats every year or Arkansas wins like once every 3 or 4 years.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter, I've said this before, it doesn't matter how many times they lose to Missouri. You're not going to force the average Razorback fan to think of Missouri as an exciting rival that they get up for the game every year. They look at that game like they look at playing Kentucky or some other SEC East school. Yeah, let's win it, but they don't get fired up. Now, you're trying to tell me, I don't know what Texas thinks about Arkansas. I'm not down there. I know what Arkansas thinks about Texas, and they will be a giant rival when they come into the league. Now, here's the thing with OU. 129 years of Razorback football. The Arkansas-OU rivalry has been a rivalry waiting to happen for 129 years. I'm not sure why it's never developed. Because you've got 2 states right next to each other. Each one of them is the big in-state team, especially in football, of that state. They should have been rivals.
Yeah.
But they've played only a few times over the years. Now, when they played, it was a big deal. The '78 Orange Bowl is considered one of the greatest victories in the history of Razorback football. So the few times that they've played, everybody's gotten excited about it. It's just never happened as a regular rivalry. It's about to happen, people. Wake up. If you don't think that's going to be a rivalry, you don't know anything about football. They're sitting right over there to the west of us. You can get in your little car and drive over to Memorial Stadium and be there. It's not like driving all the way up to Missouri 5 hours or down to Texas somewhere or whatever. That's going to be a quick trip over there. There's going to be a lot of people from Arkansas living in Oklahoma, a lot of people from Oklahoma living in Arkansas. They're going to interact. They're going to smart off to each other. This is going to become a huge rivalry. And if you can't see it, wait about 3 years. It's going to be big. So don't tell me about Missouri. Arkansas fans have never cared about Missouri the way they will about Oklahoma and the way they have always cared about Texas.
The way it was described to me when I first got here about the Missouri-Arkansas rivalry, they said, you know that annoying cousin you have that's kind of just there? And they kind of come up and they're like, hey, you know, I'm the cool cousin, and you're like, you're just kind of there.
Yeah, but I won an award last year. Okay, good.
Okay, great. Have a great
Go
time.
away.
You know, and they're at Thanksgiving. They're always trying to be in the conversation. Yeah. You're just like, nah, get them out of there. That's the Missouri-Arkansas, right?
Yeah, it's just it got forced on Arkansas by the stupid SEC that somehow thought because it's a border rivalry thing.
No,
well, Missouri's all the way up in the northern part of Missouri, and it's not like they're right across the border where Joplin is or something. It's just
weird. No,
it's not there.
No, we're done with that conversation. Diamond Hog on Twitter says, I see where a lot of fans are worried about the Diamond Hogs. Let's see. They're 12-2, averaging just under 9 runs a game, and the team ERA keeps dropping. It's now down right at 5, and they're averaging less than 1 error per game.
Yeah, well, they're actually 13-2 now. He must have posted.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
He must have. Well, no, the graphic is wrong.
Yeah, it said 12-2 there. So
he sent that in before this last win. They just swept Louisiana Tech, so it was a good test, a pre-SEC test, and they scored a lot of runs in that game. So their batting average is up to .311, as he said. Pitching looks a little better, but here's the problem: their starting pitching is really good. Once you get past that, who's the middle relievers? And you've got one guy that's sitting there. When you statistically look at what's going on, there's one proven guy. Beyond him, there's a bunch of veterans that haven't delivered. They're going to have to at some point. And there's some freshmen, for instance. A couple of them pitched at the end of that wipeout game on Sunday against Louisiana Tech, and they both pitched well. But let's face it, when you're up by 10 or 12 runs, it's easier to pitch than if the game's on the line. And the game is going to be on the line in these SEC games coming up. So that's where the concern is by some fans is, what about the pitching? But as good as those numbers are, team batting average of .311, all these home runs they've hit, over 30 home runs, that's over 2 a game. You ought to look at some SEC statistics. The SEC is brutally tough this year. Arkansas's .311 batting average, 10th in the SEC, 10th. That's down in the second division. They're 30-something home runs, so all the way down at 6th. You know, there's a lot of teams that are hitting home runs, a lot of teams that are batting, Arkansas's their fielding percentage is down in the lower second half.
Wow.
So statistically, there are a bunch of SEC teams. And even in win-loss record, Arkansas is down around 6th or whatever overall. So, you know, these things could change once conference play starts. But with the league being much better, in my opinion, than it was a year ago, and the fact that you've got a shortage of relief pitchers, you can still hit good. That other team can hit good too, maybe better than you. And you hit home runs, they can hit more home runs than you, certain SEC teams. So I don't know. Fans started this season pretty much like they did with football, pretty much like they did with basketball, and I'm just got my fingers crossed that this doesn't turn into a football/basketball situation. But it could, primarily not because the program is not good, not because they're not even maybe better than they were a year ago. This team is definitely hitting better than it was a year ago. Pitching not as good, but they're hitting better, and their defense is right in there. But the league is so much better right now. Maybe that settles down and those numbers start coming down once you start playing SEC games. Could be that Arkansas has been playing tougher opponents than some of the other SEC teams have been playing in non-conference. But it's about to start next week or this week. This weekend they play Auburn. Auburn's a team that had a very good record and then lost. I think they lost 2 of 3 to Southwestern Louisiana. So maybe this one is one that if you can get a sweep, that at least should get you off to a good start because you're about to play Alabama, who is really good. You're about to play LSU, who is really good. There's some really, really good teams in the SEC. Tennessee comes in here. Tennessee's had a couple of unexplainable losses, but they're still, I think,
still good.
They've lost 3 games.
They're still
good. And when you look at statistics, Tennessee's right up there in pitching and hitting and all that stuff.
Everything. They're all in the top.
So it could be. I'm hoping. I'm hoping things change a lot when SEC plays and some of these SEC teams aren't as good as we think they are.
Let's hope. I feel bad for a little bit for baseball because, Dave Van Horn has been hit with those pitching injuries.
Yes,
he has. And that's really.
And that is very, very concerning.
Yeah, very, very concerning. Moving forward. We'll have to see what happens, Mike. I'm with you on that one. Caroline Hoffman wants to know, what has happened to the softball team? They started the SEC by getting beat bad by the Aggies. I thought we were going to the World Series this season.
The thing that's stunning, if you look at the stats, they're 12th in the SEC out of 13 teams in hitting. Did you ever think that would happen?
No, absolutely
Preseason,
not.
there was a lot of talk about what a good hitting team this is going to be. They are 12th out of 13 teams that play softball in the SEC in hitting. Pitching is down. They're 6th in the SEC in pitching. Their fielding percentage is 6th. I thought they would be better than that. Last year, they did not lose a single SEC series. Yeah. They've lost their first series, and they lost it at home, and maybe not to one of the better teams. I mean, A&M's got a new coaching staff. They're clearly pretty good, but there are other teams in the SEC better than A&M, and you've already lost a series at home. You didn't lose a series at home at all last year. So, again, this may be another one of these things where, yeah, last year was great. This year we've got a younger team, and it might be next year before we're back where we were. We'll see. It's still early.
Yeah,
but they got some problems to correct.
Courtney Teifel does have some very talented younger players, but I think maybe
what happens with younger players?
What happens? She can go to Eric Musselman with that one, right? She can ask some advice there with some younger players. And our final question of the show is going to be from Marty Bird's Proxy, who wants to know, who are a few of the guys or gals you've worked with over the years who were characters or cut-ups? Either print or broadcast media? That's a fun question.
Yeah, I'm going to start with a guy named Nate Allen. Nate predates me. He's been here 2 years covering the Hogs longer than I have. And Nate and I, here's what Nate and I have in common. Neither one of us have any use for media guys who think they're the star. In other words, I think Nate believes what I believe, what I said. My dad always told me, we're just the pipe that information flows through. Yeah. Nobody cares about the pipe. It's about the information. It's about the Razorbacks. It's not about us. But when a guy starts trying to make himself the star of the show, we kind of don't like the guy. So years ago, there was this guy. I'm not going to say who he was. Okay. But he used to make Lou Holtz mad because Lou Holtz never liked for anybody to imply that Arkansas was the favorite in the game. He always wanted to be the underdog. And we kind of knew that. And if you made Lou mad, the rest of the press conference was just trash. This bozo would always get up there and ask some question. Well, you're favored this week. And Lou would get all mad. So one week, it's after practice. We're all standing around with our microphones, and the writers have their pens and everything. And this guy goes, Coach, the critics have installed Arkansas as a heavy favorite in this game. And Lou goes, hey, who are your critics? That's the way he talked. And he goes, well, ABC, CBS, NBC down the line. He goes, well, I would like to criticize the critics. And then he just was no good the rest of the press conference. So Nate started calling this guy the critic. Okay. That asked the question.
I like that.
Well, the critic got fired, and he vanished for several years. Okay, there was a television show back then, and anybody that was alive back then probably remembers how bad this show was. It was called The Finder of Lost Loves. And the idea was there was some guy you could go to, and if you had a high school girlfriend or a high school boyfriend and you lost your wife or whatever, and now you're middle-aged, you want to go find that old person.
Like a missed connection
Finder of
sort
lost
thing.
love. And so you'd hire this guy, and he would find the person, and then the rest of the show was about, oh, I'm back with my old high school girlfriend.
Oh, that's cute.
No, it was a terrible show. Terrible show. Nate made fun of it all the time.
I love it. Okay.
So one day we're all sitting around the media room that they used to have in the old Broyle Center, and we're talking, and Nate says, they ought to come up with a show called Finder of Lost Morons, and it would mainly be for people like the critic, because we hadn't heard from the critic. We didn't know what happened to him. Nobody had heard. So it just so happened that about 3 weeks later, they used to have this thing called Broadcast Magazine. They probably still have it. Okay. But I was looking through a copy of it, and it has job things that are open, and it has stories about people that get new jobs. And I'm looking in there, and the critic got a job at a small station in Oregon. Oh, wow. So I cut it out, and I took it to football practice, and I said, Nate, I found a lost moron. I'm a finder of lost morons. He's
I
laughing.
love it. I love it.
So then from that point on, it's still going on today. Anytime there's somebody like that in the media that leaves and we don't know what happened to him, if we come across that person, it's like, I found a lost moron.
Found it. I got one.
So Nate's been pretty funny.
I love that.
Now, there's also Grant Hall.
Okay.
Anybody that knows Grant would say, how can Grant Hall be funny? He seems so serious. Grant Hall passes notes to people.
Oh, no.
Like I'm sitting in a press conference one day, and the coach is up there talking, and he's trying to say, "I've been around the block." This is not my first rodeo.
Yeah.
I've dealt with these things before. So he's trying to say, "I've been around the block," but he just had a brain flip or something, and he said, "I've been around the bushes," and then he went right ahead. I don't think he realized what he said.
Okay.
Grant writes, "Peeping Tom?" ? And shows it to me. I'm like, okay.
Oh, no. Did you laugh?
I didn't laugh, but I was laughing on the inside.
I would have laughed.
Now, he also sends me, ever since we've gotten cell phones, he sends me these messages.
Okay.
So here are some of these text messages I get from him. There was a few years back, there was a coach resigned. It was in the news, and he texted me and said, he's resigning for health reasons. His coaching is making everybody sick. I just got that text message. Now, this year there was a baseball game where I think recently where Arkansas was down by 9 runs. I was off that day.
Okay.
So I texted him because I knew he was at the game, and I said, they need some more hits. And he texted me back and said, they're getting good at hitting the other team's bats. So he's pretty funny.
That's good. I like that.
And then I asked him about another game that I wasn't able to see, and he texted me and said, I think we may have tried to steal once, but the outlaw Josie Wales got thrown out. He was referring to Tavian Josenberger.
I love it. I love that, Josie Wales. That's great.
And then there was Mike Burrows. He's another sports writer in the 70s. Now, Mike Burrows was best known for being a guy that openly talked about the fact that he never ate anything but meat. I mean, he was the opposite of what. That's right. He was the opposite of whatever some diet person would tell you or some doctor would tell you should eat. Needless to say, he was overweight.
Oh, well, there you
But
go.
he would never eat anything but meat. Now, you know that when we go to these media events, there's often food served.
Yeah.
In College World Series, you got food in the press box. NCAA basketball tournament, they got a food room.
Yeah.
So you get these plates of food, and he would walk over to the trash and take everything that wasn't meat and run it into the trash and then walk away. And I was watching him one day, and a guy looked at him and didn't know him. Was like, what's that all about? And he goes, I'm a carnivore. You know what you do with carnivores? You stay away from them.
Oh, that's a great line.
I thought that was pretty funny.
That was a great line.
He was also, like I said, overweight, and he would do things like wear shorts when it was like 38 degrees outside. And people would go, what are you, crazy? And he goes, I got a lot of fat on me. I've got insulation from my diet. So he was pretty funny. So those are some of the people. Unfortunately, most of the people that I've thought were funny over the years, the humor is not something I can share on the air.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll keep those for
those
off the air.
Those are ones that I can share.
You can tell me those stories off the air. How about that? Okay, Mike, that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.